The phone buzzed during the Castellano meeting. 3 times. Dante Moretti didn't even glance at it. When you're negotiating a $50 million territory agreement with men who'd sooner put a bullet in your head than shake your hand, distractions get you killed. His phone sat face down on the mahogany table, vibrating insistently while he maintained eye contact with Vincent Castellano across from him. The Northern Docks, Vincent said, his voice gravelly from 40 years of cigars. Non-negotiable. The Northern Docks generated $18 million last year, Dante replied, his tone even. I'm offering you the Eastern warehouses instead. $22 million in revenue, better access to the highways. His phone buzzed again. 4th time. Marco, standing behind him, shifted slightly. A tell that something was wrong. But Dante couldn't break now, not when Vincent's eyes were narrowing, calculating whether this was weakness or strategy. You think I'm stupid, Moretti? The Eastern warehouses are under federal surveillance. We're under surveillance. Past tense. I have documentation proving the investigation closed 3 months ago. Dante slid a folder across the table. Clean as a whistle. Unlike the Northern Docks, which have the harbor patrol sniffing around after that cargo incident in January. Vincent's jaw tightened. They both knew Dante was right. The phone buzzed a 5th time. Excuse me, Dante said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made it clear this wasn't a request. He picked up the phone, intending to silence it and murder whoever was calling during the most important negotiation of the quarter. The screen showed 5 missed calls. All from Mercy General Hospital. Then a text message appeared. Your wife. I see. Critical. His blood went cold. But his face remained perfectly neutral as he read the first word again. Your wife. Dante's thumb moved to delete the message. Elena wasn't his wife, not really. She was his obligation. The woman his dying father had insisted he marry 2 years ago to cement an alliance with the Russo family. The quiet presence in his penthouse who moved through his life like a ghost, asking for nothing, expecting less. They lived separate lives in the same space. He came home late, left early. Did whatever it was she did with her days. He didn't know. Hadn't asked. Their marriage was a business arrangement that required nothing from him except his last name and the monthly deposit into her account. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. His finger hovered over the delete button. But something made him read the rest of the message. Your wife. I see. Critical. Massive internal bleeding. Please come immediately. Dr. Sarah Chin. The words rearranged themselves in his mind. Massive internal bleeding. Not a minor accident. Not a precaution. Critical meant dying. Critical meant he might not make it in time to what? Say goodbye to a woman he barely knew? A woman he'd married out of duty and ignored out of convenience? Problem? Vincent asked, his tone suggesting that any problem was weakness. Dante looked up, his expression carved from stone. Family emergency. We'll continue this tomorrow. Tomorrow I might not be interested in negotiating. Then I'll take back the Eastern warehouses and you'll get nothing. Dante stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calm even as his heart hammered against his ribs. Your choice, Castellano. He walked out before Vincent could respond, Marco falling into step beside him. Sir, I tried to interrupt, but... What happened? Dante's voice was ice as they strode through the restaurant's private dining area toward the exit. Car accident. Hit and run. Someone called 911, but by the time the ambulance arrived, she'd lost a lot of blood. Marco pulled up information on his phone as they walked. They rushed her to Mercy General. She's been in surgery for 2 hours. 2 hours. She'd been dying for 2 hours while he'd sat in that meeting arguing about docks and warehouses and revenue streams. Why wasn't I notified immediately? I tried, sir. 5 calls. You had the phone face down. Because he always had the phone face down during important meetings. Because nothing was supposed to be more important than business. Because in his world, distractions got you killed. Except now his wife might be dead because he'd prioritized a negotiation over answering his phone. The SUV was already waiting, engine running. Dante slid into the back, Marco climbing in beside him while their driver pulled into traffic. Tell me everything, Dante ordered. Hit and run on 5th Avenue approximately 11:30 this morning. White sedan, no plates recovered. Witnesses say it looked deliberate. The car accelerated toward her, mounted the sidewalk. Dante's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't an accident. No, sir. This was a message. From who? Unknown. But the timing. Marco trailed off meaningfully. The timing. Right after Dante had refused to give the Castellanos the Northern Docks. Right after he'd pushed back on the Bratva's expansion into his territory. Right after he'd made it clear that the Moretti family wouldn't be pushed around just because his father was dead and he was young. They'd gone after Elena to prove he was vulnerable. And they were right. Not because he loved her, he didn't know her well enough to love her. But because she was his. His wife, his responsibility, his name. An attack on her was an attack on him, on his authority, on everything he'd built. Find out who did this, Dante said quietly. The kind of quiet that made grown men nervous. I want names by tonight. Already working on it, sir. The hospital appeared ahead, its emergency entrance glowing harsh and sterile in the afternoon light. Dante was out of the car before it fully stopped, Marco close behind. The emergency room was chaos. Nurses rushing between curtained areas, doctors shouting orders, machines beeping their urgent warnings. Dante walked through it all like he owned the place, which technically he did. His family's donations funded the entire cardiac wing. Dante Moretti, he said to the nurse at the desk. My wife was brought in. Elena Moretti. The nurse's expression shifted immediately. Everyone knew the Moretti name. Mrs. Moretti is still in surgery. Dr. Chen left instructions that you should wait in the private consultation room. 3rd floor, room 304. He didn't want to wait in a private room. He wanted to be in that surgery watching them save her, demanding they work faster, better, harder. But he couldn't control this. Couldn't negotiate with death or intimidate bleeding into stopping. The consultation room was sterile and cold, decorated in shades of gray that matched his mood. Dante stood at the window, looking out at the city that had shaped him, that had taught him power was everything and weakness was fatal. He'd been powerful for 28 years. Built an empire his father would have been proud of. Commanded respect and fear in equal measure. And now a woman he barely knew was dying and all his power meant nothing. Mr. Moretti? He turned to find a woman in surgical scrubs standing in the doorway. Dr. Saracen, according to her name tag. She looked exhausted, and that exhaustion told him everything before she spoke. How is she? Alive. For now. Dr. Chen moved into the room, closing the door behind her. Your wife sustained massive internal injuries. Ruptured spleen, lacerated liver, fractured ribs, collapsed lung. We've managed to stabilize her, but the next 24 hours are critical. What are her chances? Honestly, 50-50. She lost a lot of blood before the ambulance arrived. The trauma to her organs is extensive. We're doing everything we can, but... She paused, measuring her next words. Mr. Moretti, does your wife have any other family we should contact? Parents, siblings. Her parents are dead. No siblings. The information came automatically, details from the file he'd read before their wedding. He'd memorized facts about Elena Russo like she was a business acquisition. 26 years old. Orphaned at 19. Art history degree. No criminal record. Perfect wife material for a man who needed an alliance more than a relationship. Then you're her emergency contact. Her next of kin. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. I need to prepare you for the possibility that she might not wake up. And if she does, there could be complications. Brain injury from blood loss, organ failure, long-term disabilities. The words landed like bullets. Each one precise, clinical, devastating. When can I see her? She's being moved to ICU now. Give us 30 minutes to get her settled, then you can visit. But Mr. Moretti. Dr. Chen hesitated. She's unconscious. On a ventilator. It's not going to be easy to see her like that. Nothing about this was easy. His wife, the stranger who shared his name and his penthouse, was dying. And Dante was realizing with uncomfortable clarity that he knew almost nothing about her. He didn't know her favorite food. Didn't know if she was afraid of the dark or loved thunderstorms. Didn't know what made her laugh or what made her cry. 2 years of marriage and he couldn't have told you the color of her eyes without checking the file. What kind of man did that make him? I'll wait, he said. Dr. Chen nodded and left, leaving Dante alone with thoughts that felt like accusations. Marco appeared in the doorway. Sir, I've got initial information on the car. Stolen plates dumped 3 blocks from the scene. Professional job. Who benefits from hurting her? That's the question. Marco pulled out his tablet, pulling up files. The Castellanos are obvious suspects, sending a message about the negotiation. The Bratva has been pushing hard for territory access. The Colombians are still angry about last month's deal falling through. Too many possibilities. Or... Marco hesitated. Say it. Or someone wanted to hurt you specifically. Not the family, not the business. You personally. Going after Mrs. Moretti was personal. Dante's jaw tightened. Personal meant someone who knew him well enough to know his weakness. But he didn't have personal weaknesses. He'd made sure of that, kept everyone at arm's length, maintained distance from anything that could be used against him. Except Elena. His wife. The woman he'd married for strategy and ignored out of habit. The woman who might die before he ever learned what color her eyes were. The ICU was quieter than the emergency room, but the quiet was worse. It was the silence of machines keeping people alive, of families waiting for miracles, of death hovering just outside sterile walls. Elena's room was at the end of the hall. Private, of course. The Moretti name bought privacy even in death. Dante stopped outside her door, his hand on the handle. Through the window he could see her outline beneath white blankets, surrounded by machines that blinked and beeped their vigilant watch. A nurse moved around the bed, checking 4 lines and making notes on a chart. He'd faced down armed men without flinching. Had negotiated deals where one wrong word meant death. Had built an empire on calculated risk and controlled violence. But opening this door felt harder than any of that. Marco stood beside him, silent. Understanding that this moment required something from Dante that he didn't know how to give. Vulnerability maybe. Emotion. The admission that something mattered more than power. "I'll be outside if you need anything," Marco said quietly. Dante nodded and pushed open the door. The machines were louder inside the room. Rhythmic beeping marking her heartbeat. The hiss and sigh of the ventilator breathing for her. The soft drip of 4 fluids. All of it working together to keep Elena alive. She looked small in the hospital bed. Fragile in a way he'd never associated with her. His memories of Elena were distant and vague. A woman who moved quietly through his life, never demanding attention, never causing problems. She attended the functions he required her to attend, wore the clothes his assistant bought for her, smiled politely at his business associates. But lying here, surrounded by machines and bandages, she looked human. Vulnerable. Young. God, she was so young. 28 now, 2 years into a marriage that had given her nothing but a name and an empty penthouse. Dante moved closer to the bed, studying her face for the first time in how long? Months probably. When was the last time he'd actually looked at her? Her face was bruised, one side swollen and discolored. A cut above her eyebrow had been stitched. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in some neat style, spread across the pillow in tangles. The ventilator tube obscured her mouth, taped in place with clinical efficiency. But even like this he could see she was beautiful. Delicate features that belonged in the art galleries she used to visit before their marriage. High cheekbones and full lips and skin that would be olive-toned when it wasn't pale from blood loss. He pulled the chair closer to her bed and sat, feeling awkward and out of place. This wasn't his world. He dealt in contracts and negotiations and calculated violence. Not hospital rooms and machines and the possibility that someone might die while he watched helplessly. "Elena," he said quietly, testing her name on his tongue. It felt foreign. He called her Mrs. Moretti in public and avoided addressing her directly in private. "I don't know if you can hear me." The machines answered with their steady rhythm. Her chest rose and fell with mechanical precision. No response, no flutter of eyelids, no sign that his words reached her wherever she was. "The doctors say the next 24 hours are critical." He felt ridiculous talking to an unconscious woman, but what else was there to do? "You need to fight. You need to..." What? Come back to a husband who barely acknowledged her existence? Return to a life that was more prison than partnership? He started again. "I'm going to find who did this. And I'm going to make them pay for hurting you." That was easier. Revenge was familiar territory. He knew how to make people pay, how to extract retribution, how to send messages that ensured no one ever made the same mistake twice. "Mr. Moretti?" He looked up to find a nurse entering, checking the machines with practiced efficiency. She was older, her movements confident despite the delicacy of her work. "I'm Nancy," she said. "I'll be taking care of your wife during this shift. Has anyone explained what all these machines are doing?" "No." Nancy launched into a detailed explanation. Ventilator settings, medications being administered via 4 monitors tracking heart rate and blood pressure and oxygen saturation. Dante listened, committing it all to memory because information was power even here. "Can she hear me?" he asked when Nancy finished. "Some patients report awareness during unconsciousness. We encourage family to talk to them, play familiar music, maintain physical contact. It might help." She adjusted something on one of the machines. "Your wife is a fighter, Mr. Moretti. She's already survived surgery that would have killed many patients. That's something." Nancy left and Dante sat in the silence, staring at Elena's unconscious face. Fighter. He'd never seen her fight for anything in the 2 years of their marriage. She'd accepted everything with quiet grace. The arranged marriage, his indifference, the empty life he'd given her. But maybe that was its own kind of fighting. Surviving a marriage to a man who treated her like furniture. Living in a penthouse that was more museum than home. smiling through events where everyone knew she was decoration, not partner. His phone buzzed. Marco's name on the screen. What? We've got something. Traffic camera caught the sedan's driver. Facial recognition is running now, but sir, I think you should see this. Send it. A moment later, a photo appeared on his phone. Grainy traffic camera footage showing the driver of the white sedan. Male, dark hair, sunglasses. Nothing distinctive about him except Dante's blood went cold. The tattoo on the man's neck. 3 stars in a triangle formation. The mark of the Kozlov Bratva. The Russians, he said flatly. Specifically Alexei Kozlov's crew. The same Alexei who's been pushing for access to our port operations. The same Alexei that Dante had told in no uncertain terms to go to hell. Where is he now? Unknown. He's been ghost since the accident. But sir, this is a declaration of war. He went after Mrs. Moretti too. I know what he was trying to do. Dante's voice was cold fury. He wanted to prove I was vulnerable. That I cared about something he could take away. Did he succeed? The question hung in the air. Did he care? Elena was his wife, but that was just a title. They'd shared a name and an address, nothing more. She was an obligation, a strategic alliance, a box he'd checked on his path to power. But looking at her now, unconscious and broken, machines keeping her alive. Yes, Dante said quietly. He succeeded. Because whether he'd realized it before or not, Elena was his. His responsibility, his wife, his to protect. And he'd failed her spectacularly by treating her like she didn't matter. What do you want me to do? Marco asked. Find Alexei. Find everyone who helped plan this. I want locations, routines, weaknesses. Everything. And then we remind the Bratva why no one touches what belongs to the Moretti family. He ended the call and looked back at Elena. The steady beep of her heart monitor was oddly comforting, proof that she was still fighting, still alive. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Words he'd never said to her while she was conscious. I should have protected you. Should have done a lot of things differently. Her hand lay on top of the blanket, pale and motionless. Dante reached out, hesitating before his fingers touched hers. Her skin was cool, her hand small in his larger one. He'd never held her hand before. Not even at their wedding, beyond the necessary moment for the ring. They existed in separate orbits, never touching, never connecting. Fight, he said, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. Please, Elena. Fight your way back. The machines answered with their mechanical symphony. And Dante sat vigil beside his dying wife, holding her hand for the first time in 2 years of marriage, promising himself that if she survived, things would be different. He would be different. But first he had to make sure the men who'd hurt her paid the price. And in Dante Moretti's world, that price was always blood. Dante spent the first night in Elena's hospital room, refusing the cot the nurses offered. He sat in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, watching machines breathe for her, counting the steady beeps that meant her heart was still fighting. Around 3 a.m. her blood pressure dropped. Alarms shrieked, nurses flooded the room, and Dante was pushed back against the wall while they worked with controlled urgency. Dr. Chin appeared, still in surgical scrubs despite the hour, barking orders that Dante couldn't translate but understood meant crisis. 10 minutes that felt like hours. Then the alarms silenced, the numbers on the monitors stabilized, and the medical team filtered out with tired efficiency. She's stable again, Dr. Chin said, her voice carrying exhaustion. But this is what I meant about critical. Her body is fighting to recover from massive trauma. These episodes will happen. How many can she survive? That depends on her strength, her will to live. Dr. Chin studied him with clinical assessment. Mr. Moretti, when was the last time you slept? Irrelevant. You can't help her if you collapse from exhaustion. I'm not leaving her alone. Something shifted in Dr. Chen's expression. Not quite approval but understanding. Then at least use the private suite we keep for family members. It's connected to this room, you'll hear if anything changes. Get a few hours of sleep. He wanted to refuse. But the doctor was right, he needed to be sharp for what was coming. The war with the Bratva wouldn't wait for him to feel ready. Fine. 4 hours. 6 would be better. 4 is what you're getting. Dr. Chin sighed but didn't argue. She showed him to the adjoining suite. A small room with a bed, bathroom and a window that looked into Elena's ICU room. He could see her from here, watch the machines, be there in seconds if needed. He set an alarm for 4 hours and lay down fully clothed, his gun within reach out of habit. Sleep came reluctantly, and when it did, it brought dreams of Elena. Not as she was now, broken in a hospital bed, but as she'd been at their wedding. In his dream, she stood at the altar in white silk, her dark hair swept up, her expression serene. When the priest pronounced them married, Dante leaned in for the required kiss and saw tears on her cheeks. He'd assumed they were happy tears. Traditional, expected. But in the dream he tasted salt and saw the truth in her eyes. Not happiness. Resignation. The acceptance of a woman who'd been given no choice, who was walking into a prison dressed as a palace. And he'd taken her hand, slipped on the ring and condemned her to a life of being invisible. The alarm jolted him awake. 4 hours exactly. Dante sat up, running his hands through his hair, trying to shake off the dream's lingering guilt. Through the window he could see Elena unchanged. Still unconscious, still dependent on machines. But alive. Still fighting. His phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 messages. He scrolled through them. Family wanting updates. Business associates offering condolences that felt more like calculations of weakness. Rivals circling like sharks scenting blood. And one message from Marco. We found Alexei. He's at the Ivanov Club. Orders. Dante typed quickly. Assemble the team. I want him alive. 3 dots appeared, then understood. 1 hour. He stood, straightening his clothes, checking his weapon. The man in the mirror looked dangerous. Dark circles under gray eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, the kind of cold fury that made people nervous. Good. Let them be nervous. He returned to Elena's room, finding Nancy checking her vitals with practiced efficiency. Any changes? Her numbers are holding steady. That's positive. Nancy adjusted the 4 drip. Dr. Chen will make rounds in about an hour. She'll have more detailed updates. Dante moved to Elena's bedside, studying her face. The swelling had gone down slightly, revealing more of her features. In the morning light filtering through the blinds, he could see details he'd never noticed before. A small scar above her left eyebrow, the way her lashes cast shadows on her cheeks, the delicate curve of her jaw. Elena, he said quietly, aware of Nancy working nearby but not caring. I need to leave for a few hours. Business that can't wait. But Marco will be right outside and I'll be back before you know it. No response. Just the steady rhythm of machines. And when you wake up. He paused, uncertain what promise to make. When you wake up, things will be different. I'll be different. He meant it, though he wasn't sure how to accomplish it. Dante Moretti didn't do emotional connections. Didn't let people close enough to matter. But Elena mattered now, whether he'd planned for it or not. She'd become important the moment someone tried to take her away. Nancy pretended not to listen as Dante squeezed Elena's hand gently, then left to do what he did best, make people pay for their mistakes. The Ivanov Club sat in the heart of Little Odessa, Brighton Beach's Russian enclave where the Bratva conducted business under the thin veneer of legitimate nightlife. Dante had been here before for negotiations that always felt more like posturing contests. The Russians respected strength, feared weakness, and tested boundaries constantly. Alexei Kozlov had just learned what happened when you crossed the wrong boundary. Dante sat in the back of the SUV, Marco beside him, for more vehicles surrounding them with his best men. Not an army, he didn't need an army for this. Just enough force to make the point crystal clear. Alexei arrived 30 minutes ago, Marco reported, monitoring feeds from surveillance they'd positioned around the club. He's in the private room upstairs with 5 bodyguards. Arrogant bastard isn't even hiding. Why would he hide? He thinks he sent a message, proved I'm vulnerable. Dante's voice was ice. He thinks I'll negotiate from weakness now. And instead I'm going to show him what happens when you touch what's mine. The SUVs pulled up to the club's entrance, blocking the street with coordinated precision. Dante stepped out, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calm. His men fanned out around him, weapons concealed but ready. The club's doorman, a massive Russian with a shaved head, moved to block the entrance. Private club. Members only. Dante didn't slow his approach. Tell Alexei that Dante Moretti is here to discuss our recent business transaction. Mr. Kozlov is not available for. Marco's gun appeared, pressed under the doorman's jaw so fast the man didn't have time to react. Mr. Moretti doesn't make requests. Open the door. The doorman's hand moved toward his radio, but Dante's cold stare stopped him. You can open it or my men can kick it down. Either way I'm going in. But one option ends with you still breathing. Survival instinct 1. The doorman stepped aside, hands raised. Inside, the club was typical Russian excess. All dark leather, gold fixtures and vodka that cost more than most people's rent. A few patrons scattered throughout looked up at the intrusion, then quickly found reasons to be elsewhere. Smart people knew when violence was coming and got out of the way. Alexei's men appeared from the shadows. 8 of them, spreading out to create a perimeter. The kind of amateur intimidation tactic that might work on civilians but meant nothing to someone who'd been navigating this world since childhood. Tell your boss I'm coming up, Dante said to the nearest guard. He has 2 minutes to decide if he wants this conversation to be civilized or if he'd prefer the alternative. The guard spoke rapidly into his radio in Russian. A pause, then a reply that made the guard's expression shift from confident to nervous. Mr. Kozlov will see you. Alone. No weapons. Dante smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'll come alone. But I'm keeping my weapons. And my men stay down here to ensure I leave the same way I arrived. That's not. 2 minutes are up. I'm going upstairs now. You can try to stop me or you can get out of my way. Choose quickly. The standoff lasted 3 seconds before the guard stepped aside, muttering something in Russian that probably wasn't complimentary. Dante climbed the stairs to the second floor, aware of Marco and his team positioning themselves strategically below. The private room sat at the end of a hallway lined with velvet wallpaper and dim lighting designed to hide sins. He didn't knock. Just opened the door and walked in like he owned the place. Alexei Kozlov sat behind a desk that was probably meant to look impressive but just looked compensatory. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of cultivated menace that came from years of violence. 3 of his bodyguards stood around the room, hands near weapons but not quite threatening yet. Dante Moretti, Alexei said in heavily accented English, spreading his hands in mock welcome. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? You know exactly why I'm here. Dante closed the door behind him, his hands relaxed at his sides. Casual. Unthreatening. Right up until the moment he needed to be neither. Yesterday afternoon, a car registered to one of your shell companies ran my wife off the road. The driver had a Kozlov tattoo. You want to explain that? Ah yes, tragic accident. Alexei's smile didn't reach his eyes. I heard about Mrs. Moretti. Very unfortunate. I hope she recovers. You hope she recovers. Dante's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that made experienced men nervous. You put her in ICU and hope she recovers. I had nothing to do with any accident. Alexei leaned back in his chair, projecting confidence. You accuse me based on what? A stolen car? Many men have similar tattoos, Moretti. Does not mean Kozlov family is responsible. The driver was Yuri Volkov. He's worked for you for 6 years. Specialized in making problems disappear. Dante took a step closer to the desk. You ordered the hit to send me a message about our territory dispute. You wanted to prove I was vulnerable. You have vivid imagination. But Alexei's smile had tightened slightly. Even if what you say is true, which I do not admit, what do you plan to do? You come into my club surrounded by my men making accusations. This is not your territory, Moretti. You're right. This isn't my territory. Dante pulled out his phone, tapping the screen once. Which is why I brought backup. Outside, the sound of vehicles arriving. Many vehicles. Sirens. Alexei's confidence cracked as he realized what was happening. He moved to the window, looking down at the street where police cars blocked every exit. Federal vehicles. SWAT teams taking positions. What did you do? Alexei spun back to Dante, fury replacing his calculated calm. I made a phone call to a federal prosecutor who's been very interested in your money laundering operations. Provided evidence of your illegal activities. Shipment records, financial transactions, witness testimony. Dante smiled, and it was cold as winter. Turns out, attacking the wife of a legitimate businessman crosses certain lines that even corrupt officials can't ignore. You can't prove. I can prove everything. The car belongs to you. Yuri works for you. And I have traffic camera footage showing him celebrating at one of your warehouses after the hit. Dante moved closer, his voice dropping. You made a mistake, Alexei. You thought going after Lena would make me weak. Instead, you gave me the justification I needed to end you completely. The door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands in English and Russian. Alexei's bodyguards were face down on the floor in seconds, cuffed with professional efficiency. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Alexei was yanked from his chair, hands wrenched behind his back. He fought against the agents, cursing in Russian, his face purple with rage. You'll pay for this, Moretti. You think you can? I think I already did. Dante watched dispassionately as they dragged Alexei toward the door. Oh, and Alexei? Yuri Volkov has been in FBI custody since last night. He's already talking. Something about a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against you. The color drained from Alexei's face. A man who knew his entire organization was about to collapse. Your move proved I was vulnerable, Dante said quietly. But it also proved something else. That I protect what's mine with everything I have. Let that be a lesson to anyone else considering similar strategies. They dragged Alexei out, still cursing, still threatening. but empty threats from a man whose power had just evaporated. Special Agent Morrison approached Dante, her expression professionally neutral. "Mr. Moretti, we'll need a full statement about the attack on your wife. Of course, my lawyers will coordinate with your office. We appreciate your cooperation in this matter." She paused. "I hope Mrs. Moretti makes a full recovery." "So do I, Agent Morrison." "So do I." Outside, Marco waited by the SUV looking satisfied. "Clean operation. The Bratva's leadership is in federal custody, their assets frozen, their network exposed. Good. Send word to every family in the city. This is what happens when you target civilians to make a point. Especially when that civilian is mine." They drove back toward the hospital, Dante checking his phone for updates from the medical staff. Nothing yet. No change in Elena's condition, which the doctors kept saying was both good and bad. Good that she was stable. Bad that she hadn't woken up. "Sir," Marco said carefully. "What happens when Mrs. Moretti wakes up?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been married 2 years. She's lived in your penthouse like a ghost. Never complained, never demanded anything, just existed in the margins of your life." Marco's voice carried no judgment, just observation. "Now you've started a war to avenge her. Destroyed the Bratva's operations. Sat vigil by her bedside. What happens when she wakes up and realizes everything has changed?" Dante stared out the window at the city passing by. "That's assuming she wakes up. She will. I've seen her at those charity events, at the family gatherings. There's steel under that quiet exterior. She's a survivor." Dante realized he had no idea. Didn't know if Elena was strong or fragile, brave or timid. He'd never bothered to find out. "When she wakes up," he said slowly, "I'm going to be honest with her. Tell her that I failed as a husband, that she deserved better than what I gave her. And then I'm going to ask for a chance to do it right. And if she says no?" The question hit harder than expected. "Then I'll respect that. But I'll make sure she's safe, protected, that she never has to fear anyone coming after her again." Back at the hospital, Dr. Chin met them in the hallway, her expression revealing nothing. "How is she?" Dante asked, his heart rate spiking despite his controlled exterior. "Her vitals remain stable. The swelling in her brain has decreased slightly. These are positive signs." Dr. Chin pulled up charts on her tablet. "However, she's still in a medically induced coma. We're keeping her sedated while her body heals from the trauma." "When will you wake her up?" "That depends on her progress. Ideally, in the next 48 to 72 hours, we'll begin reducing sedation and see if she can breathe on her own." She looked up at him. "Mr. Moretti, I need you to understand that even when we wake her, there's no guarantee she'll regain consciousness immediately. Brain injuries are unpredictable. She might wake in hours, days, or not at all. I'm giving you realistic expectations. But your wife is showing remarkable resilience. I've seen patients with less severe injuries who didn't survive this long." Dante nodded, processing. "Can I see her?" "Of course. And Mr. Moretti? Keep talking to her. Play music she likes, read to her, maintain physical contact. Some patients report hearing everything while unconscious. It might help her find her way back." He returned to Elena's room, relieved to find her unchanged. Still breathing with mechanical assistance, still surrounded by vigilant machines. But alive. Fighting. "I took care of the Bratva," he told her, settling into the chair beside her bed. "Alexei and his men are in federal custody. They won't hurt you again. Won't hurt anyone again." Her hand lay on top of the blanket. Dante took it carefully, his thumb tracing across her knuckles. Her skin was warmer than yesterday. Another positive sign. "The doctor says I should talk to you, play music you like. But I don't know what music you like." The admission felt like failure. "I don't know much about you at all. That's going to change, Elena. When you wake up, I'm going to learn everything. Your favorite songs, your favorite foods, what makes you laugh. All of it." The machines beeped their steady rhythm. Outside, afternoon light filtered through the blinds, painting stripes across the sterile room. Dante's phone buzzed. His sister Isabella. "How is she?" Isabella asked immediately. "Stable. Still unconscious. I'm coming to the hospital." "You don't need to. Dante, she's family. That means I'm coming." Isabella's voice carried the same steel that ran through all the Morettis. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you're eating and sleeping. I'll be there in an hour." She hung up before he could argue. Family. Isabella was right. Elena was family, even if Dante had treated her more like a business arrangement than a wife. But now, sitting beside her hospital bed, watching her fight for survival, he felt the weight of that family bond settling around him like a vow he should have taken more seriously. "My sister is coming," he told Elena. You've met Isabella a few times at family events. She's louder than you, more aggressive, but she means well. And she's going to ask me why I never brought you around more, why you weren't at Sunday dinners, why I kept you separate from the family. He paused, organizing thoughts he'd never examined before. The truth is, I was protecting myself. Not you, myself. Because everyone I've ever cared about became a target. My mother died in a car bomb meant for my father. My best friend was murdered to send my family a message. I learned young that love is vulnerability, that caring makes you weak. The confession felt strange, saying these things out loud to an unconscious woman. So I married you and kept you at a distance. Thought if I didn't care you'd be safer. Turns out I was wrong. They came after you anyway, and all I accomplished was giving you 2 years of loneliness instead of partnership. He squeezed her hand gently. That changes now. When you wake up, and you will wake up, Elena, because you're stronger than I gave you credit for, I'm going to be the husband I should have been from the start. A knock at the door. Isabella entered without waiting for permission, her presence filling the room immediately. She was Dante's opposite in many ways. Warm where he was cold, expressive where he was guarded, quick to laugh and quicker to fight. She took one look at Elena in the hospital bed and her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Dante," she breathed, moving to the other side of the bed. "What happened? Who did this?" "The Bratva. It's handled." "Handled how?" "Federal custody. Full cooperation with prosecutors. Their operations dismantled." Isabella studied him with the perception only a sister could have. "You destroyed an entire organization because they hurt her." "Yes. But you barely know her. You've kept her away from family dinners, from our lives. I've seen her maybe 4 times in 2 years." Isabella's voice carried accusation mixed with confusion. "Why now? Why suddenly care?" "Because she's my wife. She was your wife yesterday, last month, last year. What changed?" "Everything and nothing." Dante looked at Elena's unconscious face, trying to find words for something he didn't fully understand himself. "I almost lost her," he said finally. "And I realized I never had her to begin with. Never gave us a chance to be more than a business arrangement. That was my failure, Isabella. My choice. And if, when she wakes up, I'm going to do better." Isabella softened slightly. "Have you slept? Eaten?" "Some." "That means no." She pulled out her phone. "I'm ordering food. And you're going to eat it while I sit with Elena. Then you're going to sleep for at least 6 hours in that suite Dr. Chin told me about." "Isabella. Not negotiable. You can't help her if you collapse." He pointed at the door. "Go wash your face, change your shirt. Marco brought you clothes, and come back ready to eat. I'll stay with her." Dante wanted to argue, but Isabella's expression brooked no opposition. She'd inherited their father's stubborn streak along with his intensity. "Fine. But if anything changes, I'll get you immediately. Now go." In the adjoining suite, Dante found the bag Marco had left. Fresh clothes, toiletries, his laptop. He showered quickly, the hot water helping ease muscles tensed from 24 hours in a hospital chair. When he returned, Isabella had pulled her chair close to Elena's bed, holding her hand and talking quietly. "And Dante is terrible at showing emotion, but that's our father's fault. Papa raised him to be strong, to never show weakness. So Dante learned to keep everyone at arm's length." She glanced up as Dante entered. "But underneath all that ice, he does care. He's just bad at showing it." "I'm right here," Dante said. "I know. That's why I'm telling her, not you." Isabella smiled, but it was edged with challenge. "Someone needs to explain to Elena why her husband treated her like furniture. Might as well be me." Food arrived. Italian from a restaurant the Moretti family had frequented for 3 generations. Homemade pasta, fresh bread, tiramisu that smelled like childhood. Isabella supervised while Dante ate, ensuring he finished every bite. "Better?" she asked. "Better." "Good. Now sleep. I'll wake you if anything changes." This time Dante didn't argue. He retreated to the suite, set an alarm for 6 hours and fell into dreamless sleep, exhausted by emotion and violence in equal measure. He woke to Isabella shaking his shoulder, her face tight with barely controlled excitement. "What happened?" He was on his feet instantly, reaching for his gun before remembering he'd put it on the nightstand. "Nothing bad. The opposite." Isabella grabbed his hand, pulling him toward Elena's room. "Dr. Chin started reducing her sedation an hour ago. And Dante, she's responding." His heart rate spiked as they entered Elena's room. Dr. Chin stood by the monitors, watching numbers with professional focus. But there was something different about Elena. A tension in her body that hadn't been there before, as if she was fighting her way toward consciousness. "What's happening?" Dante asked, moving to her bedside. "We've reduced the sedation to minimal levels. Her brain activity is increasing. These are very good signs. Dr. Chen pointed to one of the monitors showing brain wave patterns. She's starting to breathe above the ventilator, meaning her body is taking over from the machine. Will she wake up? Possibly within the next few hours. But Mr. Moretti, I need to manage your expectations. She might not be immediately responsive. There could be confusion, disorientation, memory issues. Brain injuries don't heal cleanly. But she's waking up. She's making progress, yes. Dante returned to his chair, taking Elena's hand. Her fingers twitched slightly in his grip. A small movement but deliberate. Conscious. Elena, he said softly. I'm here. You're safe. You're in the hospital, but you're going to be okay. Her eyelids fluttered. Not opening but movement. Response. Isabella squeezed Dante's shoulder. I'm going to give you 2 privacy. But I'm right outside if you need anything. She left, and it was just Dante and Elena and the machines marking her return to consciousness. Come on, Elena. You can do this. You've been fighting for 2 days. Just a little more. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. Come back. Please. Minutes passed. Then her eyes opened, just a crack, just enough to show brown irises that were unfocused and confused. But open. Where? Elena, Dante breathed. You're awake. You're okay. Her gaze drifted around the room, taking in the machines, the sterile walls, his face hovering above her. Confusion clouded her expression, then something else. Something that looked like fear. She tried to speak, but the ventilator tube prevented it. Her hand pulled weakly against his grip, her breathing accelerating, alarms starting to beep. Don't try to talk. You have a breathing tube, they'll remove it soon. Just relax. You're safe. But she wasn't relaxing. She was panicking, her eyes wide, her body trying to fight against the tubes and wires tethering her to the machines. Dr. Chen rushed back in, checking the monitors. She's fighting the ventilator. We need to remove it now before she injures herself. What followed was organized chaos. Nurses positioning Elena, Dr. Chen explaining what was about to happen, the careful removal of the tube while Elena coughed and gasped. Finally it was out. Elena lay back against the pillows, breathing on her own, tears streaming down her face. Elena, Dante said gently. You're okay. You're going to be okay. She looked at him, really looked at him, and said in a voice rough from the tube, Who are you? The words hit like bullets. What? Dante stared at her. Elena, it's me. It's Dante. I don't. She blinked, confusion and fear warring in her expression. I don't know who that is. I don't know who you are. Dr. Chen moved in quickly, checking Elena's pupils, asking questions. Elena, do you know where you are? Hospital. Her voice was uncertain. It's good. Do you remember what happened? Elena's face crumpled. I don't remember anything. I don't know where I am or why I'm here or who. Her eyes found Dante again. Who are you? Why are you here? I'm your husband, Dante said, his voice strained. Elena, we've been married for 2 years. She stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. Married? I'm not married. I don't even have a boyfriend. She looked around frantically. Where are my parents? I want my parents. Dr. Chen's expression turned grave. Mr. Moretti, could you step outside for a moment? No. I need to. Now please. He forced himself to leave, to stand in the hallway while medical staff worked with Elena inside. Isabella found him there, reading the devastation on his face. What happened? She doesn't remember me. Doesn't remember our marriage. Asked for parents who've been dead for 9 years. His voice was hollow. Isabella, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Because to Elena he was a stranger. He'd made sure of that for 2 years, keeping her at arm's length, treating her like an obligation instead of a partner. And now, when he was finally ready to be the husband she deserved, she couldn't remember that he was her husband at all. Dr. Chen found Dante in the hallway 20 minutes later, her expression carefully neutral in the way that doctors used when delivering bad news gently. Mr. Moretti, let's talk in the consultation room. He didn't want to talk in a consultation room. He wanted to go back to Elena to make her remember, to fix this impossible situation. But Isabella guided him down the hall with a firm hand on his arm, and he let her because he didn't trust himself to do anything else. The consultation room felt smaller than before. More suffocating. Your wife is experiencing what we call retrograde amnesia, Dr. Chen began, settling into her chair with the exhaustion of someone who'd been awake too long. The trauma to her brain has affected her memory formation and recall. How much has she forgotten? Dante's voice was controlled, but his hands were clenched into fists under the table. Based on our preliminary assessment, everything from approximately the last 10 years. She remembers her childhood, her teenage years, but nothing from her early 20s onward. Dr. Chen pulled up scans on her tablet. She doesn't remember attending college, her parents' deaths, or your marriage. Will it come back? Possibly. Retrograde amnesia can be temporary or permanent. There's no way to predict which. Some patients recover their memories completely over weeks or months. Others never regain what they've lost. She looked at him with sympathy that felt like pity. I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Isabella spoke up from beside him. So Elena thinks she's still 18? Living with her parents? Essentially, yes. Her last clear memory is from around that time period. Everything after is simply gone. Dante processed this, his mind calculating implications. Elena didn't remember their wedding. Didn't remember 2 years of marriage. Didn't remember him at all. She only knew the version of herself who'd existed before her parents died, before life forced her into an arranged marriage with a stranger. What do we do? He asked. We don't push. Memory recovery can't be forced. It either happens or it doesn't. Pushing too hard can cause psychological damage, create false memories, or traumatize the patient further. Dr. Chen set down her tablet. My recommendation is to introduce information slowly. Let Elena adjust to her current reality before overwhelming her with details about a life she can't remember. You want me to tell my wife we're married when she looks at me like a stranger? I want you to be patient and kind and give her time to heal. Both physically and mentally. Isabella's hand found his under the table, squeezing hard. We'll figure this out, she said quietly. Whatever it takes. But Dante wasn't sure there was anything to figure out. Elena had looked at him with fear and confusion, not recognition. She'd asked for parents who'd been dead for 9 years. She'd rejected the reality of their marriage completely. Maybe this was the universe's way of giving her what she deserved. A chance to escape a marriage she'd never wanted, to a man who'd never valued her. Can I see her? Dante asked. Yes, but remember, go slowly. She's frightened and disoriented. The last thing she needs is pressure from someone she can't remember. He returned to Elena's room, moving carefully like approaching a wounded animal. She was sitting up now, the ventilator gone, oxygen delivered through a simple nasal cannula. Her eyes tracked him as he entered, wary and uncertain. Hi, he said, staying near the door. Giving her space. How are you feeling? My head hurts. Everything hurts. Her voice was still rough, damaged by the breathing tube. The doctor said I was in an accident. Yes. Someone hit your car. You were badly injured. She studied him with eyes that held none of the quiet resignation he'd grown accustomed to. This Elena was younger, more vulnerable, less guarded. The Elena who existed before tragedy had shaped her into the woman he'd married. She said, "You're my husband." I am. I don't remember you. It wasn't accusatory, just confused. I don't remember being married. Don't remember anything past my 18th birthday. Dante moved further into the room, pulling the chair to her bedside but keeping distance between them. The amnesia might be temporary. Your memories could come back. Or they might not. She looked down at her hands, noticing the wedding ring for the first time. A simple platinum band, he'd let his assistant choose it, hadn't been present when Elena received it. Another failure in a long list. This is real. We're really married. 2 years. Though I haven't been much of a husband. The honesty came easier than expected. I married you for business reasons. An alliance between families. And I kept you at a distance because I thought it would keep you safe. Her eyes widened. Business reasons? What kind of business requires marriage alliances? He'd forgotten. This Elena didn't know about the Moretti family's real business. Didn't know what world she'd married into. My family is involved in complicated businesses. Some legal, some less so. Your father. He stopped, remembering. Your father was Antonio Russo. He and my father arranged our marriage before you turned 19. My father arranged for me to marry a stranger? Hurt flickered across her face. And I just agreed? Your parents died before the arrangement could be finalized. I married you 2 years later after you turned 26. You didn't have much choice. You needed protection and financial support. I needed the alliance with the Russo family name. So I sold myself for protection. Her voice was hollow. That's what you're telling me. No. You survived the only way you could. And I failed to give you the partnership you deserved. Dante leaned forward slightly. Elena, I know you don't remember me. Don't remember our marriage. But I need you to understand something. The accident wasn't random. Someone tried to kill you to hurt me. And until we know you're safe, you need protection. Fear crept into her expression. Someone tried to kill me? The Russian mob. They wanted to prove I was vulnerable by hurting you. I've dealt with them, but there could be others. He kept his voice gentle despite the fury those words evoked. I have security posted outside your room. When you're released from the hospital, you'll need to stay somewhere safe. With you. She said it like a death sentence. Unless you prefer somewhere else. I can arrange for you to stay with my sister Isabella. You met her briefly earlier. Or a safe house with round-the-clock security. Whatever makes you comfortable. Elena looked at him for a long moment, processing. This stranger who claimed to be her husband, who'd admitted their marriage was a business transaction, who was now telling her she was a target for mob violence. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I don't remember my life, don't know who to trust. And you're sitting here telling me we're married, but you're a complete stranger. I know. And I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. I'm sorry you're in this position. Sorry my life put you in danger. Sorry I wasn't the husband you needed. Were we happy? The question was quiet, almost afraid of the answer. Dante could have lied. Could have painted a picture of domestic bliss. Made her think their marriage had been a love story instead of an arrangement. But she deserved honesty even if it hurt. No. We were polite strangers sharing an address. I kept you at arm's length, thought distance would protect you. All it did was make you lonely and make me realize too late what I'd wasted. Tears gathered in her eyes. So I've lost 10 years of memories and the life I can't remember was lonely and empty anyway. The life you can't remember was my failure, not yours. And if, when your memories return, you'll remember that you survived with grace despite having a husband who didn't deserve you. A knock interrupted them. A nurse entering with dinner trays, checking vitals, adjusting medications. The intrusion gave Elena time to wipe her tears, to rebuild the composure that was clearly instinctive even without memories. When they were alone again, she asked, "What happens now?" "Now you focus on healing. The doctors want to keep you here at least a week to monitor your recovery. After that, we figure out next steps together." Together. He tested the word. We're strangers, but we're supposed to figure this out together. You're not obligated to do anything. If you want a divorce, want to walk away from this marriage and start fresh, I'll make sure you're set up with everything you need. Money, protection, a fresh start. The offer hurt to make, but it was right. You deserve the choice I never gave you before. Elena stared at him, something shifting in her expression. You'd really do that? Just let me go. If that's what you want, yes. Though the protection is non-negotiable until we're certain the threat is neutralized. But the marriage, the life we had, you're free to walk away from all of it. And what do you want? The question caught him off guard. What did he want? I want to be the husband I should have been from the start. Want to give you the partnership and respect you deserved. Want to earn your trust and maybe, eventually, something more than obligation. He met her eyes steadily. But what I want matters less than what you need. So you think about it, take your time and tell me what you decide. Before Elena could respond, his phone buzzed. Marco's name on the screen with a text. Problem. Need you outside now. Dante stood. I need to step out for a moment. But I'll be right outside if you need anything. He found Marco in the hallway, his expression grim. What's wrong? Victor Reyes called. He wants to meet. Says it's urgent about Elena. Victor Reyes ran the Colombian operation in the city. Drugs mostly, with fingers in weapons and trafficking. The Moretti family had maintained careful distance from the Colombians, their businesses overlapping but not competing. Why would Victor be calling about Elena? That's what concerns me. He refused to give details over the phone, just said you'd want to hear this in person. Marco pulled up a location on his phone. He's at the Ravello restaurant. Public place, neutral ground. Dante calculated quickly. The Ravello was upscale Italian, always crowded, the kind of place where violence would attract too much attention. As meeting spots went, it was relatively safe. Tell him 1 hour. And Marco, full security detail. I don't trust Victor's sudden interest in my wife. Already arranged. 6 men, armed, watching all approaches. Dante returned to Elena's room. She'd been moved to a semi-reclined position, picking at her dinner without enthusiasm. I need to leave for a few hours, he said. Business that can't wait. But Isabella is coming to stay with you and Marco's team is posted outside. You're safe here. The business that involves arranged marriages and mob hits? Her voice carried bitter humor. Something like that. He moved closer, then stopped, remembering she didn't know him, didn't want his comfort. Elena, I know this is overwhelming. But I promise, no one will hurt you again. You can't promise that. You said yourself someone tried to kill me because of you. And I made sure they'll never have the chance again. The bratva is finished. Anyone else thinking about making a move knows what happens when you touch what's mine. I'm not yours. The words were quiet but firm. I'm a stranger who happens to be legally married to you. That doesn't make me yours. He was right. But the possessiveness he felt toward her had nothing to do with legal documents and everything to do with the realization that he'd almost lost her before he'd ever really had her. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry. That was inappropriate." Isabella arrived before the awkwardness could deepen, bringing energy and warmth that immediately shifted the room's atmosphere. "Elena. You're awake." She moved to the bedside, her smile genuine. "I'm Isabella, Dante's sister. We've met a few times but you probably don't remember." "I don't remember anything from the last 10 years, Elena said, her voice small. "Then we get to start fresh. I get to make a better first impression than I probably did originally." Isabella settled into the chair Dante had vacated. "And while my brother goes to handle whatever crisis he's handling, you and I can get to know each other properly." Dante felt a surge of gratitude for his sister. Elena needed this. Needed female companionship, someone who wasn't a stranger claiming to be her husband. "I'll be back in a few hours," he said. "Take your time," Isabella replied, already chatting with Elena about hospital food and terrible daytime television. Outside, Marco waited with the SUV. Ravello restaurant. Victor's already there, alone at a corner table. The drive took 30 minutes through evening traffic. Dante used the time to run through possibilities. Why would Victor Reyes suddenly take interest in Elena? The Colombians and the Italian families maintained careful boundaries. Mutual respect born from mutual threat. Unless Victor saw opportunity in Dante's vulnerability. The Ravello was crowded as expected, the dinner rush in full swing. Victor sat at a corner table with sight lines to both exits, a glass of expensive whiskey in front of him. He stood as Dante approached, offering his hand. "Moretti. Thank you for meeting me. You said it was about my wife." Dante didn't bother with pleasantries. "Talk." Victor gestured to the chair across from him. Dante sat, aware of Marco positioning himself nearby, aware of his own men scattered throughout the restaurant. "I heard about the accident," Victor began. "Tragic. I hope she recovers fully. She's awake. She'll survive." "Good. That's good." Victor swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "The reason I called is because I know who ordered the hit." Dante's entire body went still. "The Bratva is in custody. Alexei Kozlov was a puppet. Someone else pulled the strings." Victor leaned forward. "Moretti, the hit on your wife wasn't Bratva initiative. They were hired. Paid to make it look like their work while the real architect stayed hidden." "Who?" "That's the complicated part." Victor pulled out his phone, showing Dante a photo. A man in his 50s, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit. "Recognize him?" Dante's blood went cold. "That's Giovanni Russo. Elena's uncle. Former underboss of the Russo family, currently in semi-retirement. But apparently still very interested in family affairs." Victor put away his phone. 3 weeks ago, Giovanni approached my people asking about hiring contractors for a delicate job. We declined. Too much heat, too much risk. But we heard through channels that he eventually found someone willing. Why would Giovanni want Elena dead? She's his niece. That's the question, isn't it? Victor sipped his whiskey. "I did some digging. Turns out when you married Elena, she inherited certain Russo family assets. Properties, businesses, investment accounts. All tied up in trust until she turns 30. That's in 2 years." "Exactly. And if Elena dies before 30, those assets revert to the surviving Russo family members. Primarily Giovanni, who's been bleeding money on bad investments and expensive habits." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Giovanni had arranged for Elena to be killed, hired the Bratva to do it, and made it look like retaliation against Dante. If Elena died, Giovanni inherited millions and Dante went to war with the Russians, eliminating 2 problems at once. "Why tell me this?" Dante asked. "What do you gain?" "Information. And a favor owed." Victor's smile was calculated. "Giovanni tried to drag my organization into his family drama. That's disrespectful. I'm giving you the information to handle it however you see fit. All I ask is that you remember this gesture when opportunities for cooperation arise." It was a power play disguised as a favor. Victor positioning himself as an ally while eliminating a potential rival and earning Dante's debt. But the information was valuable regardless of motivation. "I'll remember," Dante said. "And Victor, thank you. Genuinely. De nada. Just make sure Giovanni learns the cost of disrespecting family. Niece or not, you don't kill your own blood for money." The drive back to the hospital was silent, Dante's mind racing. Giovanni Russo had tried to murder his own niece for inheritance money. Had put Elena in that ICU bed, given her amnesia that might never heal, destroyed 2 years of her life that she couldn't remember. And Dante had been so focused on the bratva that he'd missed the real threat hiding in plain sight. What do you want me to do? Marco asked. Find Giovanni. Quietly. I want to know where he is at all times, who he talks to, where he's vulnerable. Dante's voice was ice. But we do this carefully. I need proof that connects him to the hit before I make a move. And if Elena remembers before we have proof? If she asks about her uncle? Then I tell her the truth. That her family tried to kill her for money. Back at the hospital, Isabella met him in the hallway, her expression troubled. How is she? Dante asked. Physically recovering. Emotionally overwhelmed. She asked me about our wedding, about how she seemed during the marriage. I tried to be honest without being cruel. Isabella crossed her arms. Dante, she's terrified. Doesn't know who to trust, what to believe. And finding out her marriage was an arrangement, that someone tried to kill her, that she's lost a decade of memories. It's too much. I know. Do you? Because you're standing here looking like you're planning a war, and what Elena needs is someone to make her feel safe, not someone proving how dangerous they are. Someone tried to kill her, Isabella. Multiple someones. I need to make sure it doesn't happen again. I understand that. But don't forget she's a person, not a possession to protect. Isabella's voice softened. She asked me if you loved her. Before the accident. I didn't know what to say because honestly, Dante, I don't know. Did you? Had he loved Elena? He'd married her for strategy, kept her at distance for protection, ignored her for convenience. Love hadn't factored into any of it. But sitting in that hospital watching her fight for life, realizing he might lose her, something had shifted. Whether it was love or the potential for it or just the recognition of what he'd wasted, Dante couldn't say. I don't know, he admitted. But I'm going to find out. He returned to Elena's room, finding her awake despite the late hour. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was alert when he entered. Couldn't sleep, he asked. Too much to process. The doctor gave me something for pain, but my mind won't stop racing. She gestured to the chair beside her bed. Will you tell me about us? About how we met, how we got married? Isabella said it was complicated. Dante sat, considering how much truth to share. Your father and my father arranged our marriage when you were 18. A strategic alliance between families. But your parents died before it could happen. Car accident when you were 19. Pain flickered across her face. They're dead. Yes. I'm sorry. You lived alone for 7 years, working as an art curator, before the marriage arrangement was revived. You needed financial stability and family protection. I needed the Russo alliance. We married 2 years ago at City Hall. Small ceremony, just witnesses. Did I love you? The question hit hard. No. And I didn't give you reason to. We lived separate lives in the same penthouse. I came home late, left early, barely spoke to you beyond pleasantries. You deserved better. Then why are you here now? Why do you care if I survive? Because almost losing you made me realize what I'd wasted. What we could have been if I'd tried. He met her eyes. Elena, I can't promise you'll ever remember our marriage. Can't promise the memories will come back or that you'll want them if they do. But I can promise to be honest with you, to protect you and to give you the choice about what happens next. She studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. This Elena was different from the one he'd married. Younger, less guarded, more willing to demand answers. Isabella said someone tried to kill me. That it wasn't random. That's true. And I need to tell you something you're not going to want to hear. Dante took a breath. Your uncle Giovanni arranged the hit. Hired people to kill you so he could inherit your trust fund. The color drained from her face. Uncle Giovanni? But he was at my parents' funeral. He helped me when they died. He's family. He's also heavily in debt and desperate. Your trust fund is worth $15 million. That's enough motivation to kill even for family. You're lying. But her voice wavered with uncertainty. You're trying to turn me against my family so I'll depend on you. I'm telling you the truth so you know who to trust. Elena, I have proof, financial records, witness testimony, phone records connecting Giovanni to the Bratva contractors. He pulled out his phone, showing her the evidence Marco had compiled. I'm sorry. I know you want to believe family wouldn't hurt you. But your uncle saw you as money, not a person. She stared at the phone, at the damning evidence, and something broke in her expression. The last anchor to her old life, to family she thought she could trust, destroyed by simple greed. Everyone is using me, she whispered. You married me for an alliance. My uncle tried to kill me for money. No one cares about me. That's not true. Isn't it? You admitted our marriage was business. Said you kept me at distance. And now you're being kind because guilt, not because you actually care. Dante wanted to argue to convince her she was wrong. But was she? Had he started caring about Elena? Or was this just guilt and obligation dressed up as concern? I don't know what I feel, he admitted. 2 days ago you were an obligation I'd gotten comfortable ignoring. Now you're a person I'm realizing I never knew, never gave a chance. Maybe that's guilt. Maybe it's more. I honestly don't know. At least you're honest. She wiped her eyes, fighting tears. I want to be alone. Please. Elena. Please. I need to think, to process all of this. Just, please go. He wanted to stay, to comfort her, to fix the pain his honesty had caused. But she'd asked him to leave and he owed her at least that respect. I'll be right outside if you need anything, he said, standing. And Elena, you're not alone. You have Isabella, have me if you want. You have people who will protect you even if trust takes time to earn. She didn't respond, just turned her face away, dismissing him. In the hallway, Marco waited with an update. We found Giovanni. He's at his estate in the Hamptons, likely unaware we know about his involvement. Good. Maintain surveillance but don't approach. I need to figure out how to handle this without traumatizing Elena further. Sir, if I may, she's going to be traumatized regardless. Finding out her uncle tried to kill her isn't something that gets easier with time. I know. But I need to give her space to process before we take action. Dante ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion finally catching up. What's our timeline on the proof? Victor's testimony alone might not hold up in court. He's got his own reasons for lying. But the financial records are solid. Giovanni made payments to 3 different shell companies that trace back to Bratva operations. That plus the hired contractors in custody willing to testify for reduced sentences. We've got enough to put him away. Or to handle it ourselves. Marco met his eyes. That's your call, sir. But if you go that route, Elena will know. And she'll have to live with the knowledge that her husband killed her uncle, justified or not. The conundrum. Dante could hand Giovanni to the authorities, let the legal system handle it. Clean, distant, technically proper. Or he could handle it the way his world traditionally handled betrayal. Swift, final, sending a message that family blood didn't excuse murder attempts. One option might preserve his relationship with Elena. The other would probably destroy it forever. We go legal, he decided. Gather everything, hand it to the FBI. Let Giovanni rot in prison knowing he destroyed his freedom for money he'll never see. And if he makes bail, comes after her again. He won't. I'll make sure of that. The next morning, Dante returned to Elena's room with coffee and pastries from a bakery Isabella had mentioned was Elena's favorite. Information his sister had gleaned from subtle questions during their evening together. Elena was sitting up, looking less exhausted but more guarded. She accepted the coffee with a quiet thank you, studying him warily. I've been thinking, she said. About what you said last night. About giving me choice. Okay. I want to stay with Isabella when I'm released. Not with you, not at your penthouse. I need space to figure out who I am without memories, without pressure from a husband I don't remember. It stung, but Dante had expected it. Of course. Isabella has plenty of room and she'll be thrilled. The security detail is non-negotiable, but they'll be discreet. And the marriage? On hold. We're still legally married, but I'm not going to pressure you for anything more than you're comfortable giving. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, we can talk about what comes next. Relief flickered across her face. Thank you. But Elena, there's something else you should know. He pulled out the file Marco had prepared. The FBI is moving on your uncle this afternoon. They have enough evidence to arrest him for conspiracy to commit murder. I thought you should know before it hits the news. She took the file with trembling hands, reading through evidence that proved her uncle's betrayal. Dante watched her process it, the denial, the anger, the hurt. All the stages of grief compressed into minutes. He really did this, she whispered. Uncle Giovanni tried to kill me. I'm sorry. Don't be. You tried to protect me even though I was nothing but an obligation to you. She looked up, her eyes wet with unshed tears. At least you were honest about it. Giovanni pretended to care while planning my death. That's worse somehow. The afternoon brought FBI agents and formal statements. Elena was questioned for hours about her relationship with Giovanni, about her trust fund, about anything that might strengthen the case. She answered with remarkable composure, never breaking down despite obvious emotional turmoil. Dante watched from the hallway as she faced down federal prosecutors, demanding justice for an attack she couldn't remember. This Elena, the one without memories of quiet resignation, without 2 years of learning to be invisible, was fierce. Strong. Everything he'd suspected she could be if given the chance. By evening, Giovanni was in federal custody. The news hit media outlets immediately. Prominent Italian businessman arrested for murder for hire, targeting his own niece for inheritance money. The story would dominate headlines for weeks. It's over. Isabella said, finding Dante in the hallway outside Elena's room. Giovanni is locked up, the Bratva is dismantled, Elena is safe. Is she? Dante looked through the window at Elena, who sat staring at nothing, processing everything that had happened. She's lost her memories, learned her marriage was fake, discovered her uncle tried to kill her. I'm not sure safe covers what she's feeling. Give her time. Let her heal physically and emotionally. Then see what develops. Isabella squeezed his arm. You care about her, Dante. I can see it. Maybe not love yet, but something real. That's more than you've given anyone in years. Was it enough, though? Caring about someone you'd failed so spectacularly, who had every reason to walk away and never look back. He didn't have an answer. That night, Dante sat vigil one last time in Elena's hospital room. Tomorrow she'd be released to Isabella's care, moving into his sister's guest room, beginning the long process of rebuilding a life she couldn't remember. I'll miss this, Elena said quietly, surprising him. She'd been silent for hours and he'd thought she was asleep. Miss what? Having someone here. It's strange, I don't remember you, don't know you really. But there's something comforting about not being alone. She turned her head to look at him. Is that weird? No. It's human. Will you visit? At Isabella's. If you want me to. I think I do. I think. He paused, searching for words. I think I want to know you, Dante. Not as my husband necessarily, but as a person. Maybe if we start there, see where it goes without the pressure of a marriage I can't remember. Hope flickered in his chest. Small, fragile, but real. I'd like that. Tell me something about yourself. Something real, not about business or family obligations. Just something you. Dante thought about it. When was the last time anyone had asked him to reveal himself beyond his role as Moretti heir? I collect old books, he said finally. First editions, mostly philosophy and poetry. I have a library in the penthouse. You probably never saw it because I kept it locked. But late at night when I can't sleep, I read Dante Alighieri. My namesake. The Divine Comedy? And his poetry. La Vita Nuova especially. It's about love and loss and transformation. He smiled slightly. Ironic, considering I built a life avoiding all three. Read me something, Elena said. From memory if you can. He had memorized dozens of passages over years of sleepless nights. Love hath so long possessed me for his own and made his lordship so familiar, he recited softly, that he who at first was harsh to me is now gentle. And when he takes from me my valor so that my spirit seem to vanish, then my frail soul is so sweetened by desire that my face shows this pallor. Then love assails me with such cunning that he makes my strength depart. That's beautiful, Elena whispered. And sad. Dante Alighieri understood that love is rarely simple. That it transforms us, sometimes against our will. Is that what happened to you? Love transforming you against your will? I don't know if it's love. But something is transforming me. He met her eyes. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's recognizing what I almost lost. Or maybe it's actually getting to know you instead of treating you like furniture. I think I like this version of you, she said. The one who reads poetry and admits he doesn't have all the answers. This version is new. Still figuring himself out. They sat in comfortable silence, Elena's eyes growing heavy with medication and exhaustion. As she drifted toward sleep, she murmured, "Thank you for staying, Dante. For being here even when I asked you to leave." "Always," he replied. "For as long as you need." And watching her sleep, Dante made a promise to himself and to her. Whether Elena ever remembered their marriage or not, whether she ever wanted to try again or chose to walk away completely, he would be the man she deserved. Would prove through actions, not words, that he was capable of change. That love, or whatever this was becoming, could transform even the coldest heart. 3 months later, Dante stood in Isabella's garden watching Elena laugh at something his sister said. The sound still caught him off guard. Genuine, unguarded, nothing like the polite smiles she'd worn during their marriage. This Elena was different. The amnesia had erased 2 years of learning to be invisible, and what emerged was someone fiercer, more present. She'd started painting again, filling Isabella's sunroom with canvases that burst with color and emotion. She asked questions constantly, demanded honesty, refused to accept half-truths. She was everything he'd never let her be. "You're staring," Marco observed quietly. "I'm aware." "She still doesn't remember?" "No. Dr. Chen says the memories might never return." Dante watched Elena gesture animatedly, explaining something about brush techniques to Isabella. "But she's happy. Happier than I ever saw her before. And you're miserable." "I'm fine. You're in love with a woman who doesn't remember being your wife, who's living with your sister because she doesn't trust you enough to come home." Marco's voice carried sympathy. That's not fine, sir. Dante couldn't argue. He visited 3 times a week, always careful to maintain boundaries Elena had set. They talked about books and art and nothing important. Built something that felt like friendship while the legal dissolution of their marriage sat unsigned on his desk. Elena had asked for divorce papers a month ago. Offered him the easy out. A marriage she couldn't remember to a man she barely knew. He'd had his lawyers draw them up, brought them to Isabella's house and couldn't make himself hand them over. I should let her go, he said quietly. Should and want are different things. She deserves someone who didn't fail her so completely. She deserves the choice. You keep deciding what's best for her, boss. Maybe ask what she actually wants. Elena noticed him then, her face lighting up with a smile that made his chest ache. She waved him over and he went like a man being pulled by invisible strings. Dante, tell Isabella I'm right about chiaroscuro technique. I'm not getting involved in art debates above my understanding. Coward, Elena teased, and the casual affection in her voice was new. Hard-won over months of careful friendship. Stay for dinner? Isabella's making osso buco. I don't want to intrude. You're never intruding, Isabella said firmly. Your family. Stop acting like a guest in my house. Over dinner, Elena told stories about her week. Gallery visits, painting commissions, lunch with old friends she was slowly reconnecting with. Her life was full now, vibrant in ways their marriage had never allowed. I got my trust fund dispersed, she mentioned casually. Giovanni's conviction freed up the accounts. $15 million I didn't know I had. That's good, Dante said carefully. You have options now. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Elena set down her fork, her expression serious. The divorce papers. You brought them 6 weeks ago and I still haven't signed them. His heart stopped. If you want changes to the settlement terms. I don't want the settlement at all. I don't want your money, Dante. It's more than fair. I don't want money. I want to know why you haven't pushed me to sign. Her eyes held his. You could have filed without my signature after 30 days. Irreconcilable differences, citing the amnesia. Your lawyers told me. But you didn't. Why? Isabella quietly excused herself, leaving them alone in the dining room. Dante could feel the weight of the moment, the importance of whatever he said next. Because I'm a coward, he admitted. Because signing those papers means accepting that I destroyed something before I even understood what it could be. And because some pathetic part of me hopes you'll remember or will build something new or... He stopped, the words catching. Or that you'll give me another chance I don't deserve. You think you don't deserve another chance? I know I don't. You were lonely and scared and trapped in a marriage to someone who treated you like an obligation. Then you lost your memories, learned your uncle tried to kill you, discovered your entire adult life was built on arrangements you never chose. Why would you give me another chance? Elena stood, moving around the table to stand in front of him. Because over the past 3 months, you've shown me who you actually are. Not the cold businessman who married me for strategy, but the man who reads poetry at midnight, who visits his sister just for an excuse to see me, who brings me art books and actually discusses them instead of just nodding politely. Elena. I don't remember being your wife, Dante. Don't remember our wedding or our life together. But I know you know. And the man I know is someone I could love. Someone I might already love. His breath caught. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She took his hands. I'm saying I don't want a divorce. I want a real chance to build something with you without the baggage of a marriage I can't remember. Start fresh, date properly, see where it goes. What if your memories come back? What if you remember how badly I failed you? Then we deal with it together. But Dante, I've spent 3 months getting to know you, and nothing about the man you are now suggests you'd make the same mistakes twice. She squeezed his hands. So I'm asking, do you want to try? Really try this time? He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. More than anything. Then take me home. Not to Isabella's. To our home. Show me the library you kept locked, the life we could have if we both choose it. 6 months later, Dante woke to find Elena painting in the penthouse library, morning light streaming through windows she'd demanded be uncovered. The room that had been his private sanctuary was now theirs. Her canvases leaning against his bookshelves, their lives finally merging. Morning, she said without turning around. There's coffee in the kitchen. He kissed her shoulder, watching colors blend under her brush. What are you working on? Memory. She stepped back, showing him a canvas covered in abstract shapes and light. Dr. Chin says my memories might never return. So I'm creating new ones. Better ones. Better than what we had? Better than what you described. Better than being strangers sharing an address. She set down her brush, turning to face him. Better because we chose this, Dante. Every single day we choose each other. He pulled her close, breathing in paint and possibility. Every single day. The penthouse that had been a museum was now a home. The marriage that had been obligation was now partnership. And the man who'd thought love was weakness discovered it was the only thing that made him strong. Elena's memories never returned. But they built new ones together. Better ones, chosen ones, real ones. And that was enough. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.